Hello, my name is Allison Hunt, and this is the Old Slocum House Theater Company's documentary, Part 6. I am happy to bring you more newspaper clippings and reviews from the Old Slocum House out of the archive of Sharon Casey Rollins, who was a gigantic player in the Old Slocum House Theater, as well as Blue Parrot, Clark College, the Peanut Gallery, and Mask and Mirror theaters, and Heartland Theater too. So the first play that I have for her is Little Women in November of 1978. Wednesday, November 15th, 1978. Slocum to stage Little Women. Louisa May Alcott's famous story of 4 girls growing up in New England will be the next production of the Slocum House Theater Company, opening Thursday. Jo is played in the play by Carrie Moles. Her sisters are Meg, Judy McCleary, Beth, Vicky Boxberger, and Amy, Karen Krugner. Others in the cast are Sharon Genry, Golga Lardy, David Belden, Ron Swanson, Darren Mulner, Janet Stone, Ora Roline, and Bill Wallace. Friday, November 1978. Review Little Women. The mother of the girls is played by Sharon Gendry, who might be a little too young and attractive for her mother part written into the story. When Anne March, Janet Stone, tossed her a black shawl to go with her aging complexion, it got one of the biggest laughs of the night from the audience. Mr. Lawrence, David Belden, and Mrs. March, Sharon Gendry. 3 of the New England sisters in Little Women are, from left, Karen Krugner, Judy McCleary, and Carrie Moles. From left, Beth, Vicky Boxberger, Chaplain March, Ron Swanson, and Meg, Judy McCleary. Chaplain March and Professor Burr, Bill Wallace. Putting together a play with largely inexperienced people would seem to be a shaky undertaking, especially when 4 key female roles go to youngsters 14 to 20 years old. That was the prospect facing director Hermine Decker and her 2 aides, Kay Schmidt and Martha Winacki. At the Old Slocum House Theater, surprisingly their efforts paid off, and Little Women fitted together into a fairly smooth and entertaining show at Thursday night's opening at the Old Theater in Esther Short Park. Little Women is tame material compared to the TV action on which today's generation has been raised, but it ties in well with the distinctive, intimate kind of period costume productions for which the Old Slocum House Theater is noted. That's Hermine. Hermine was very stickler about everything matching the time period. Problems of growing up, of courtship, and of death, which struck down youngsters in greater numbers in the earlier days, are the subject of Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, which first appeared in book form shortly after the Civil War. 2 of the 4 Little Women sisters in the play are only 14. One is 16, and the oldest, Julie McCleary, playing Meg, is 20. All 4 girls, Judy Carrie Moles, Jo, Vicky Boxberger, Beth, and Karen Kruger, Amy, entered well into the spirit of the play Thursday, but the choicest role belonged to Carrie. She is the hopeful writer of the fiction, supposedly a tomboy type, described by one of the other characters as having blunt manners and too independent spirit. Carrie did a nice job of portraying the emotional ups and downs of an adolescent and young lady. Ron Swanson, a Slocum House veteran, has not much more than a bit of a role as the father, who is absent during part of the play in the Civil War. He made one of the strongest presentations, however, especially in his descriptions of his Little Women when he was reunited with them. Bill Wallace, a Clark County Community Players performer, who has been working on a German accent, brought that out Thursday night for his part of Professor Burr, who wins Jo eventually. Also in the cast are Gary Gagliardi, Laurie, David Bendlin, Mr. Lawrence, Darren Malner, John Brooke, Janet Stone as the rich, opinionated relative Aunt March, and Ora Rolene as Hannah Mullet. The supporting players did capable jobs Thursday. After the show, director Decker explained, "I had so much success with Anne of Green Gables that I thought I should do another one with teenagers, and people thought Little Women would be a good play for the holidays." Although the young people in Little Women had little or no experience, they were easy to direct, Miss Decker said. Little Women will be presented again tonight and Saturday at 8:30 at the Old Slocum House, and there will be a matinee Saturday, in addition to performances November 22nd, 24th, and 25th. Slocum bills Fool's Paradise, a faradical comedy. Fool's Paradise will be presented by the Old Slocum House Theater Company Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, November 23rd and 25th at the theater. The comedy is by Sidney Rosenfeld, is directed by Hermine Decker, assisted by Martha Winacki. Tickets for the evening performances are $3 evenings, $2 matinee. The cast is composed of D.R. Coombs, Crystal Mitchell, Deborah Barnett, Ora Rolene, Julie Madsen, Rich McCauty, Glory Gall, and Sharon Rollins. Christmas at Slocum House is scheduled for December 17th, featuring Ron and Donna Frazier, Rick Simmons, and Mary Margaret Howell. Curtain time for this show is 2:30 p.m. Donations for the event will be used for restoration purposes. Friday, November 18th, 1983. Paradise, fast-paced way for theater fan to relax. Fool's Paradise, which opened Thursday for an 8-performance run at the Slocum House, is another of those light, frothy, English drawing room comedies without real substance, but which gives playgoers a chance to relax for a couple hours. The story is the usual fare of Victorian England's upper crust keeping a stiff upper lip, while the grocer and butcher keep demanding their money. However, it is fast-paced, and some strong performances keep those in the audience from being overcome by the feeling that they have sat through the whole thing before. 2 widows who were married to the same man, although not at the same time, are left a legacy of a stately house filled with expensive furniture, but no money to pay the bills that keep mounting. As the gas is shut off and the telephone disconnected, they hatch a plot to sell some emeralds they believe are fake. Enter D.R. Coombs in the role of a designing dealer who tries to buy the furnishings and the emeralds. Combs's performance is excellent. He seems born into the role of stuffy English nobility, with both voice inflections and subtle gestures that create an immediate bond with the audience. Crystal Mitchell, playing a senile elderly maid, draws most of the laughs during the evening as she totters around with trays of tea and mutters imprecations against her employers for not having paid her for 11 months. Ora Rolene and Julie Madsen play the widows in a believable style, while Rich McCauty is successful in portraying the son of one of the widows. Other supporting roles are carried by Deborah Barnett, Glory Gall, and Sharon Rollins. For people who appreciate Victorian style, the authentic set is out of this world. The furnishings include a velvet parlor set that actually came around Cape Horn by sailing ship to Vancouver in the 1850s. The set was restored by Hermine Decker, who directs Fool's Paradise, and by Charles Alexander. The beautiful gowns worn throughout the play also were worth the price of admission. The comedy will be performed at 8:30 p.m. today and Saturday, then again November 23rd, 25th, and 26th. There will also be a 2:30 p.m. matinees this Saturday and on November 26th. I have an article from Friday, November 18th, 83 of Weekend Billboard. On stage, the Old Slocum House Theater Company, the oldest of Clark County's growing number of theater groups, opened its latest comedy, Fool's Paradise. November 11th, 83. Fool's Paradise next play at Slocum House. Fool's Paradise is a farcical comedy by Sidney Rosenfeld. It's next on the agenda at the Old Slocum House Theater. Rich Magotti tried to practice his French and wound up with a string of onions, he tells Aura Rowling, left, and Julie Madsen in the scene from Fool's Paradise. House of Fire, period piece, warms Old Slocum House. Friday, March 23, 1984. Slocum's House of Fire, warm, but not too hot. House of Fire, the comedy mystery that opened at the Old Slocum House Theater Thursday night, has a clever opening and a surprise ending. The play is a pleasant change of pace from the usual drawing room farces offered over the years by the Old Slocum House players. Although not exactly hilarious, the production does offer a few laughs and uses the small and limited stage to good advantage. As with almost all Slocum House offerings, House of Fire is a period piece set in a New York suburban community in the early 1900s. Someone is setting house fires, and the finger of guilt is pointed at a pretty but bored young housewife, played by Cinda Corley. Her husband, played by Steve Swanson, sticks by her loyalty at first, but finally begins to believe that she really is the arsonist. Other friends and neighbors pop in and out during the three-act play. All gradually turn against her, except a lawyer friend, played by Ted Gregory, who sees in the desperate young housewife something of his own yearning to escape the humdrum life of mortgages and daily routine. Best performances are turned in by Cindy Gregory as a bubbly New York playgirl, and Robert Blond as her husband. Blond is a veteran of Slocum House productions. Whenever he enters a scene, the tempo starts to pick up, and the other actors seem to draw energy from his stage presence. That's a wonderful review. After a brief but outstanding performance is that of Sharon Rollins, as a dumpy dingaling who gets turned on by watching other people's houses burn. Rollins only has a bit part in this play, but she seems to enjoy herself in her role so immensely that she carries the audience along with her. Boy, does she. She is the biggest ham you ever seen in your life. She's fantastic. But each person was fantastic in their different way. Wesley Rhodes is suitably churlish as a parsimonious insurance agent who gets what's coming to him in the end. Ken Champagne as Doc, a rustic old philosopher, is believable, but perhaps plays his role a little too low-key. Liz Berg, Irene Jonas, and Elliot Blond round out the cast of the play, which is directed by Shirley Lindsay. As interesting as the play itself is the colorful clothing worn by the performers. The women's gowns especially help the audience envision what life must have been like in the days of Teddy Roosevelt. Thursday, April 19th, 1984. Local theater groups have many stages. I had part of the picture of this article, but I didn't have the article. But thanks to Sharon Casey Rollins, I have the whole article now. Community theater is healthy in Clark County, with 5 major production companies enjoying good public support. However, limited facilities make it difficult for some groups to handle the audience the more popular productions could draw. The newest group, the Blue Parrot Theater Company of Camas, Washougal, has no home at all. It has produced its plays in 3 locations, and its next play will be presented in still a 4th. Another, the Peanut Gallery Theater Company, has been using the large auditorium at Mountain View High School in the Evergreen District, but is seriously considering moving because the school is difficult for theater goers to find. A third group, Encore Players, has settled in the Columbia Arts Center after having been forced to run hither and yon to find rehearsal costume storage space and adequate performance areas. However, spokeswoman for each group indicated community support has been substantial, and the future looks bright for live theater here. Here is a look at these companies, their problems, and their successes. Blue Parrot was the name of the cafe operated by Rick Humphrey Bogart in the 1942 movie classic Casablanca. Blue Parrot also is the name of the Camas Washougal Theater Company that was formed a year ago, January, and has been making a pretty fair splash since. The company has produced 3 plays, The Time of Your Life, Play It Again, Sam, and Tell Me That You Love Me, Julie Moon, and is in the process of presenting a 4th, The Rainmaker. We hope someday to be a full-time theater group, said Patrick Webb, Camas newspaperman and president of the nonprofit Theatrical Corporation. He heads a 9-member board of directors. Webb said Blue Parrot was organized in January 1983 to provide theater companies in the East County area. One of the group's first actions was to hire a director, Dennis Sparks, who had theatrical experience. A Clark County native and son of a country treasurer, June Sparks, he receives a small salary drawn from the revenues produced by the plays. One of Blue Parrot's main problems, Webb said, is the lack of a permanent home. The group's first play was presented at Jem Tagart Middle School, east of Washougal. The second was in the AWPPW Union Hall in downtown Camas, and the third in a small room at Camas High School. The Rainmaker, slated for May 18th through 26th, is to be held at the Garfield Auditorium of the Camas schools. The auditorium has adequate seating, Webb said, but is to undergo extensive remodeling that will prevent its use for at least the next year. During that time, Blue Parrot intends to present at least 3 more plays. The Peanut Gallery Theater Company was formed in Vancouver in 1972 with its first production, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. The original dream maker and realizer of the dream is Kevin Neubauer, a local music enthusiast who teaches vocal music at Fort Vancouver, the Columbian observed at the time. Neubauer and his wife, Carolyn, remain prime movers in the Peanut Gallery, which opened the Mikado last Thursday. During its decade of existence, the theater company has produced many major works, including Paint Your Wagon, Guys and Dolls, The King and I, Gypsy, The Man of La Mancha, Fiddler on the Roof, The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, and many others. Peanut Gallery plays are performed in the auditorium of Mountain View High School in the Evergreen District. Although this facility offers more than 500 seats, it has distinct disadvantages, primarily the rental cost and the fact that it's hard for the public to locate. Publicist Rick Kellogg said, "There is an active consideration of moving to the Columbia Arts Center," said Kellogg, also a member of the board of directors, adding it costs the Peanut Gallery from $10,000 to $15,000 to produce each of its shows. We are struggling to break even, he said. There's no way we spent that much at Slocum House, but they were doing musicals, so they were doing big musicals, but man, there's no way we spent that much. Most of the furniture and the costumes the Slocum House already had, and then people would help and donate a lot of materials to use also. We had a really good support team of volunteers that would do all kinds of stuff. So I was like, wow, that's a lot. He said a grant from the Washington State's Art Commission helped this group finance the Mikado, which was expensive to stage because of the ornate costuming, scenery, and royalties. Like all the county's amateur theatrical troupes, Peanut Gallery's hundreds of volunteers are unpaid, except for a few principals who might receive small stipends for their efforts. Encore players, formerly known as Clark County Community Players, will celebrate a 10th anniversary next year. The organization opened with 40 carats in early 1975. Encore formerly presented shows for 2 weekends, but is now performing for 3 weekends. This is possible because the group is able to arrange such a schedule at the Columbia Arts Center. Previously, no one would let us have their place long enough to do a show for 3 weekends, said Mickey Wallace, who began doing backstage work in late 1975 with CCCP. The organization had to move around considerably for rehearsals, performance days, and storage before the center opened. One time, for example, CCCP was billed to open at the State School for the Blind, but was forced out the first weekend and had to settle for Washougal. That was our first out-of-town opening, Wallace recalled. It almost did us in. A set had been made specially for the stage in Vancouver, had to be moved and altered for Washougal, then moved back to Vancouver again. We try to be careful in our scheduling now at the Arts Center so that we don't go up against another of the major performing groups on the same dates, Wallace said. It's a matter of economics. Encore is doing all right financially, but needs to watch its budget, even with its donated time from performers and backstage crew, Wallace said. Wallace said he expects senior citizens to be one of the most important bulwarks of live theater in the future. They are very supportive of the arts, especially the visual arts. It's a nice outing for them. Another group using the Arts Center is the Brahms Singers for concerts and for its concert versions of Gilbert and Sullivan. The next Gilbert and Sullivan show, The Pirates of Penance, is booked for May 26th and 27th. Mickey Wallace, publicist for Brahms, said Gilbert and Sullivan shows have been a Brahms tradition for almost 2 decades. The acoustics are fantastic for one thing, and the audience is in a better viewing situation than the majority of churches. The group performed in some churches previously. There is also more stage for the show. Most churches aren't really set up for theater. The old Slocum House Theater Company has operated in its own facility for a long time in Esther Short Park, but frequently faces a problem of space for storage and other purposes. Hermine Decker said $3,000 has been saved for the addition of a kitchen to the building. Steve Smith is in charge of trying to get some grants to help in the financing. One encouraging development, Decker said, is that many new people are attending shows. Old Slocum added 100 to its mailing list from its last production. But we do have a continuing need at Old Slocum and other theaters for people to work backstage, Decker said. That's awfully important. Old Slocum is also looking for a roll-up curtain and can use donations of broken furniture, statuettes, or other items that could be mended and used for stage furnishings. At Clark College, dinner theaters have proven a popular innovation with the cooperation of culinary arts students and staff. Another important development for Clark was selling of 500 season tickets, an important aid to the drama effort. 2 productions will be offered in the 1984-85 season, one a musical. During the spring, turnouts for dramas at Clark tend to taper off, and the college concentrates on productions for children, which tour occasionally. Clark uses Foster Hall Auditorium as part of Geyser Hall for its shows. In Geyser, which is the setting for the musicals, the balcony will be removed before next season. Anderson said this will improve the facility for concerts and lectures in addition to musicals. I have a flyer from the Victorian Festival of 1984, which is the Debonair Lord Quicks, which was originally the Gaylord Quicks, and Billy the Kid. This article's from July 27th of 1984. Victorian Festival will begin August 2nd. Billy the Kid, a 3-act melodrama staged by the Old Slocum House Theater Company, will open Victorian Festival 1984 at 8:30 p.m. Thursday, August 2nd in the Slocum House Theater, 605 Esther Street. Written by Walter Woods and directed in Vancouver by Ora Roline with assistance from Shirley Lindsay, Billy the Kid will be performed at 8:30 p.m. Friday, August 3rd, Saturday, August 4th, and Thursday, August 16th. The Victorian Festival continues with the Slocum House Players' performance of The Debonair Lord Quix, opening at 8:30 p.m. Thursday, August 9th. This Author Wing Pinero comedy in 3 acts is directed by Hermine Decker, with assistance from Martha Winnicky. This article is from Friday, August 10th, 1984. Sir Chester Frayne, Dale Poff, kisses the glove of Mariel Eden, Deborah Barnett, while Lord Quix, Robert Blond, looks on. Slocum offers Victorian hit. The Old Slocum House Theatre Company's Victorian Festival has received a good boost from the Debonair Lord Quix, a comedy that opened Thursday night at Old Slocum in Esther Short Park. The comedy, by a leading playwright of the Victorian and Edwardian eras, Author Wing Pinero, proves to be one of the troupe's stronger productions. Good directing, effective acting, and a script that combines a realistic flair with some good, suspenseful twists of plot are ingredients that make the Pinero work a successful production. Pinero is remembered best today for his farces, which are well constructed, with a good handling of plot and coincidence. They still are staged frequently in Great Britain and elsewhere. The second Mrs. Tanqueray and Trelawney of the Wells are among his better-known works. The 1889 play, now on stage at Old Slocum, known as one time as The Gaylord Quix, tells of the romantic adventures of a British marquis. The title role is played by Robert Blond, a frequent performer at Old Slocum. He is a good choice for Quix, his smooth-talking, rakish type, an older man who has decided to settle his intentions on a young woman played by Deborah Barnett. Blond encounters problems from Donna Jensen, playing a former servant girl, who has advanced to the position of operator of a manicure business. Eventually, Blond has to match his wits with Jensen, and the clash of personalities and interest help develop understanding of each individual's character. Jensen plays her part with vitality and intensity that give the Slocum version much of its appeal. Encounters between Blond and Sharon Rawlins also add considerable interest to the debonair Lord Quix. Rawlins is adept at portraying an aging coquette, seeking to renew her relationship with Blond. She requests one last farewell before the end of their great attachment, and finally entices him into a meeting in her boudoir. There she keeps a box of keepsakes of their romance, dead yet still animate. Del Poff is a caressing friend of Quix, makes the most of his comic opportunities. Judy Ham slips into a doddering routine as an old countess, and Donna Neth has the role as Barnett's mother, a woman captivated by one of Rawlins' racy romantic novels. Other performers are Tony Bump, as Jensen's palmist boyfriend, Russ Sullivan, Young Pack, Liz Sherry, Mary O'Hara, Noelle Evans, and Ora Roline. Hermine Decker directed The Debonair Lord Quix, and Martha Winnicky assisted. Wednesday, July 25th, 1984. A recent item about the Columbia Arts Center and the need for a summer festival brought an immediate response from supporters of the Old Slocum House Theatre Company, who noted that worthy organization has been holding such a festival for years. This summer will mark the 4th anniversary of the Slocum House Victorian Festival, which is held each weekend in August. This year, the first play will be Billy the Kid, a Western melodrama that has its first performance on Thursday, August 2nd. The second Victorian play will be The Debonair Lord Quix, opening Thursday, August 9th. The next play I have is The Unattainable, This article's from November 21st, 1984. The Unattainable. Alice Blevins, Sharon Rollins, and Vicki Neighbors join in a crying scene in Somerset Maugham's The Unattainable. The play opens tonight at the Old Slocum House Theater. The Unattainable. Play offers dry wit of Somerset Maugham. Died in 1965, the English novelist and playwright left behind a legacy of famous books and not so well-known plays. He is best remembered for his novels of Human Bondage, The Moon and the Sixpence, and The Razor's Edge, the latter recently remade as a movie. His short plays were mainly Edwardian social comedies. Typical of them is The Unattainable, now playing at the Slocum House, 605 Esther Street, presented by the Old Slocum House Theater Company. The Unattainable is another light comedy about the foibles of English upper-middle-class characters who play romantic drawing room games while the empire collapses around them. In the comedy, Caroline Ashley, played by Vicki Neighbors, learns from an article in the Times that her husband, whom she has not seen in years, has died. The news brings about general rejoicing, not grief, and a parade of suitors seeking her hand. Ashley, two close friends, played charmingly by Alice Blevins and Sharon Casey Rollins, try to manipulate her into marriage with a stuffy barrister, Greg Spicer, while a lovesick admirer, Robert Blonde, languishes in the background, and a fluttery maid, Connie Snyder, pops in and out answering the door. The family doctor, Dale Poff, whose characterization seems akin to a British W.C. Fields, amuses her and the audience with his drolleries, and finally startles the entire assemblage with the announcement that Ashley's husband is not dead at all, thus endowing her with the romantic aura of being unattainable. As with most plays of the sort done at the Slocum House, this one is wordy, although cleverly written. One has to appreciate the dry and understated wit of Maugham and pay close attention to the flow of repertoire if he is to enjoy this type of play. The beautiful turn-of-the-century handmade gowns worn by the women of the cast are worthy of special attention. The Unattainable is directed by Hermine Decker, founder of the Slocum House Company, with Blonde as assistant director. The Old Slocum House Theater Company wraps up the final performances of the farce, The Unattainable. Alice Blevins, Sharon Rollins, and Vicki Neighbors have reason to cry in The Unattainable, which concludes its Old Slocum House run this weekend. The next play we have is Lights Out, from April of 1985. In our area, Slocum House to audition for Lights Out comedy. Auditions for Lights Out, a mystery comedy to be presented in the spring by the Old Slocum House Theater Company. 5 men and 6 women are needed to fill the roles. The production also needs a stage manager, a publicist, a props master, and backstage assistants. Shirley Lindsay will direct. Ken Champagne is assistant director. Celebrity attractions. In Vancouver, the Old Slocum House Theater Company will open the mystery comedy Lights Out at 8:30 p.m. Thursday for a 2-week run at its theater at 605 Esther Street. Have a beautiful front page cover of Weekend Entertainment from the Columbian, April 26, 1985. Lights Out. Richard Wolfe, Cindy Gregory star in Old Slocum House Mystery. John F. Dale Poff and Susan Bates, Vita Jones, discuss the secret. Lights Out. Actors spill energy and charm into silly mystery. Lights Out is especially fun when the lights go out, which they do, and often. And when they're on, well heck, there's plenty to chuckle about. The Old Slocum House Theater Company opened a larkish, highly energetic production of this obscure, entirely meaningless show Thursday night. A cast of 11 whisked on and off the small, box-light Slocum stage within 90 minutes. There's simply no way to pretend Lights Out is anything more than a silly, impossible fluff. The plot is as weak as they come. It's something Agatha Christie might have scribbled in her grade school days. But if you're in the market for a few hoots this weekend or next, look to the Slocum. It's a bargain for a family outing at $3 a seat or 2 at matinees. The script by Dennis Cathill relates the story of the almost penniless Agnes Harwood, who is desperately in search of a buyer for the New York estate she inherited from her uncle, Albert Stillwell. In her attempt to snag a buyer, Agnes, played by Sharon Casey Rollins, invites some likely prospects to spend the weekend at the old mansion. Her candidates are an up-and-coming bond salesman, Steve Swenson, a well-to-do couple, F. Dale Poff and Vida Jones, and a socialite representing her parents, Barbara Larson. Blundering real estate agent William Patterson Vaughn, Wesley Rhodes, is also on board to assist in any potential transaction. To this roster, add Agnes's daughter, Doris, Cindy Gregory, her suitor who writes detective stories, Neil Parker, Richard Wolfe, a secretary with something afoot, Elizabeth Berg, a flighty maid named Ellen who thinks herself a career girl, 14-year-old Amy Yonker, and a handyman, Patrick Nutt, whose heart belongs to Ella. In short, you have a cast of rather shallow yet extremely admirable characters. As the play unfolds, someone has sent a letter signed Albert Stillwell to Doris, which warns her to stop her mother from selling the old place. Someone else, or are the someones the same, is pretending to be the ghost of Stillwell, and the well-off couple, John and Susan Bates, definitely share a questionable secret. The Slocum House is an outlet for raw talent, and this production brings a number of novice performers to its boards. Lights Out is an ideal vehicle for amateurs. It's terrific to see this ensemble cast having such a ball and giving it. In most cases, their all. Co-directors Shirley Lindsay and Ken Champagne get the biggest round of applause for the fast pacing. The two also succeed at the considerable challenge of moving around so many players in so small a space. An attention to detail has also been achieved here. Characters pouring and sipping sherry, or puffing up pillows, or straightening paintings on the wall. Sharon Rollins shines brightest as Agnes, offering a variety of subtle nuances in both her line deliveries and facial expressions. As the ridiculous rhyming real estate agent, who's basically a whining pipsqueak, Wesley Rhodes is most amusing, but he's got the benefit of dozens of lines such as this: "Vaughn is good and Vaughn is brave, but spooks send good men to the grave." And as Mr. and Mrs. Bates, F. Dale Poff and Vida Jones do a nice job portraying, respectively, the overbearing bully and the easily browbeaten. Richard Wolfe falls a trifle short as detective writer Parker, who, naturally, is the first to put all the pieces to this elementary puzzle together. Unlike Christie's famous Belgian sleuth, Hercule Poirot, Wolfe rushes his big moment of revelations. He ought to bask in the conceited oafishness, glory in his genius. Perhaps he can still work on that. Benny's, Patrick Nutt, heart belongs to maid Ella, Amy Yonker, Barbara Larson, Steve Swenson, and Richard Wolfe in Lights Out. Lights Out. Shirley Lindsay and Ken Champagne have directed a cast of 11 in the silly mystery Lights Out for the Old Slocum House Theater Company. That was from Friday, May 3rd, 1985. The next play I have is Two Roses, which was from February of 1986. Two Roses, a romantic comedy by James Alberry. This article is from Sunday, February 23rd of 1986. The Old Slocum House Theater Company will open a production of James Alberry's romantic comedy Two Roses Thursday at the theater, 605 Esther Street. Performances will continue at 8:30 p.m. Two Roses, first produced in 1870, focuses on con artist Digby Grant, his daughters, and their sweethearts. The Grants are a poor family struggling to get by until they suddenly become heirs to a handsome estate. Sharon Casey Rollins and Wes Taylor in Two Roses by Old Slocum House Theater. And this article is from February 28, 1986. Clever dialogue surmounts thorns. Now, I already read this one in my mom's newspaper clippings from the last video I did, so I won't redo it. But this is the one where the walls fell down and Sharon's propping up one wall and continuing her lines, and Ron Carmona's propping up the other wall nonchalantly and continuing his lines, and this plant kept falling over and stuff. So I won't reread that, but that's part of this play. Victorian Festival, July of 1986. The Love Chase by James Sheridan Knowles and Double Infidelity by Pierre Marvaux. Apologize if I don't say everybody's name correctly. So what I found fantastic about this one is I remember The Love Chase. I was just a kid, but my mom was in it. But Double Infidelity was directed by, dun dun dun, Tony Bump. So I thought that was really cool. He said he was 20 years old when he directed that play. We're going to interview him later, and hopefully he'll let us see some of his documents and share his story. The Love Chase. Deborah Barnett comforts Noelle Evans and Gaethel Ferguson in The Love Chase. This article's from Friday, July 11th, 1986. The Love Chase, amazing romp. She comes, my fluttering heart gives note, the empress of its realms is near, so croons Sir William Fawnlove in The Love Chase. Upon arrival of his beloved Widow Green, he's only one of several aflutter over the game of Love on the Loose, in the comedy originally staged 150 years ago in London. Under the direction of Hermine Duthie Decker and Martha Winnicky, the Old Slocum House Theater Company's Thursday night opened its annual Summer Victorian Play Festival with an admirable and amusing, though trite, production of the play by James Sheridan Knowles. The play is a little more besides how very silly and how very stupid people in love can behave. The flirting, the primping, the futile fibbing, the sappy letter writing is all here. The vain old baronet, Sir William Fawnlove, loves the even more vain Widow Green, who loves Master Waller, a man of fashion, who loves Lydia, Widow Green's maid. Add to this the roster of romance, Sir William's daughter, Constance, and her childhood enemy, Master Wildrake. These two are smit with each other, as cat with dog. Yet smit they are, and smit they'll stay, even though they mask their affections with snarls and claws. Leading the performances in this foolish and frenzied chase are Dale Poff as Waller and Sharon Rollins as Widow Green. Poff has a good time as he gives his audience while faking he's in love with Constance, just to irk Wildrake. He's so obviously in his glory, mugging it up in the form of one aside after another. Rollins, as well, plays her role to the hilt. She is every ounce the thing Sir William describes. She's all appliances, as she walks, her waist still tapering, takes it platantly. How lollingly she bears her head withal, she sinks with such a sway. Her voice comes melting from her round and swelling throat. Rollins is a musical lark, delivering many of her lines, and is constantly delightful as one who married for fortune the first time around, and is now really only interested in gulping down a man and swallowing him with what good grace I can. As Constance and Wildrake, Connie R. Merrill and Ron Carmona are a wee bit stiff, which is unfortunate because with that stiffness is sacrificed much of the punch and beauty of the flowery, poetic language, which is the main strength of The Love Chase. While spirited and vigorous, Merrill lacks the wistful femininity her role also demands. While sometimes animated, Carmona is too often unflinching and detached from his love's ridiculing. Kin Champagne is a winning Sir William, and supporting players, actors ranging from experienced to novices, are fine. Gaethel Ferguson as Waller, Noelle Evans, Lydia, Deborah Barnett, Alice, Cynthia M. Dominic, Phoebe, Caroline L. Carmona, Amelia. 4 young lads clad in black deserve their own salute for achieving smooth set changes and transitions. Costumes are divine, as is usually the case at the Old Slocum, and this time the credit goes to Louise Snyder, Hermine Decker, Martha Winnicky, Peggy Gettle, Michael Ann Randall, Ginny Spires, and Gail Creetman. The next play I have is The Man from Toronto, which was in May of 1987. Audition. The Man from Toronto is a very funny romantic comedy by Douglas Murray. So I won't read the audition notice, but these are the characters that they were looking for. This article's from Friday, May 22nd, 1987. I've already read this one in my last video, so I won't reread it. I'm just hoping you watch all the videos all the way through. Cast rolls along nicely in period comedy. So this was directed by Sharon Casey Rollins, and my mom was in this one. Judy Sanchez, Toby Dillinger, Connie R. Hill, Gaithel Ferguson, Ken Champagne. This article's from Friday, May 15th, 1987. I've also read this one in my last video. Obscure play by Old Slocum House imitates Goldsmith comedy. The next play we have is Mrs. Warren's Profession. This was done in May of 1988. I've also read this article in my last video. Fine casting rescues Shaw play. Sharon Casey Rollins and Stephanie Parker play mother and daughter in Mrs. Warren's Profession. Mrs. Warren's Profession, a play by George Bernard Shaw, continues at the Old Slocum House Theater. Yesteryear's scandal. Says Vivie Warren to her mother, people are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. At the turn of the century, George Bernard Shaw's Mrs. Warren's Profession scandalized even the critics when it opened on Broadway. Now the Old Slocum House Theater Company, under the direction of Mike Haywood, attacks the 1898 script about the business of brothels and the business between mothers and daughters in general. Sharon Casey Rollins stars in the title role as genial and fairly presentable old blackguard of a woman. Meet Mrs. Warren. This is the second of 3 weekends to catch the Old Slocum House Theater Company's well-acted production of Mrs. Warren's Profession, mounted in the Intimate Theater at 605 Esther Street, Vancouver. The play, considered indecent when George Bernard Shaw wrote it in 1898, focuses on the themes of prostitution and the mother-daughter experience. Under the direction of Mike Haywood, Sharon Casey Rollins stars in the title role, and Stephanie Parker is her daughter Vivie. Also appearing, Richard Altenbach, F. Dale Poff, Bob Madsen, and Robert Scoville. From left, Sharon Casey Rollins, Bob Madsen, and Robert Scoville. Old Slocum House Theater Company. Mrs. Warren's Profession through October 3rd, the 4-poster, November 19th through 28th, Christmas at the Old Slocum House, December 19th and 20th, Her Step-Husband, February to March 12th. Stephanie F. Parker, Dale F. Poff, standing, and Richard Altenbach share a curious moment in Mrs. Warren's Profession, now playing at Old Slocum House Theater through Saturday, October 3rd. Local arts. This article's from September 16th, 1987. Old Slocum House stages play about prostitution. The Old Slocum House Theater Company opens George Bernard Shaw's Mrs. Warren's Profession at 8 p.m. Thursday at its Intimate Historical Theater. The play about prostitution and the dilemma of the mother-daughter relationship was written in 1893, and it scandalized Broadway in 1905. New York critics called it mean and dirty, and an insult to decency. It glorifies debauchery. It besmirches the clergyman's calling. However, the play about a brothel does not even seem crude as yesteryear's critics made it. Mike Haywood directs a cast headed by Sharon Casey Rollins in the title role and Stephanie Parker as her daughter, Vivie. Other actors are Bob Madsen, Richard Altenbach, F. Dale Poff, and Robert Scoville. Connie R. Merrill is assistant director. I think that was the first one she assistant directed.